Welcome back, HVAC professionals. We are going to talk about one of our favorite in-house subjects today, web design. And since nobody knows more about web design, presumably, than Jason here, we thought that we'd talk with him and see what his insights are on the process. We're going to take a look at some of the basic questions, Jason, that are coming up in the industry. As a matter of fact, I look at a list of the big hot topics and it's like, okay, copy paste onto here. Okay. So we're going to hit some of those, and then we're going to get some of your insights on the core concepts of web design.
Let's do it.
Okay, cool. So first of all, we'll start with an easy one. How can web design make a difference?
In what?
Like, so for a business, like, let's say like they know that they need a website, and that they know that much, and they've entered into the HVAC industry. How is web design, quality professional web design, going to make the difference for them?
Well, oftentimes your website is the first interaction your potential customers have with you. There's word of mouth is not what it used to be, and traditional advertising is not what it used to be. People look you up on Google, and that website tells them what they need to know about you and your company. And so that's your face, that's your book cover. And beyond the considerations of SEO, where we talk about how you get placed, is let's just assume they get there. That needs to make them comfortable and make them feel like you can be trusted, and that's on both a professional and a personal level, especially when you're talking about service businesses and local SEO particularly. Is they need to see something there that's not just generic. They need to see like some kind of personal touch. We say this in the podcast Nolan and I do. We often talk about we need pictures of you, have pictures of your crew, pictures of the owner and his family, stuff like that. That creates, it's a tenuous personal connection because it's just on a screen, right? But it still works. It's still we see massive differences in conversion between that, and so that's all of that is part of good web design. And that's not even counting if you go into usability and things like that, which make it easier for the customer to find the information they want. And when they do that, they transfer that feeling of ease and comfort to your company, and they are more likely to call you.
Okay, that's a good point. I mean, we've seen time and time again the dozens of websites on the backside of Google, like, oh yeah, cruddy template design.
Template design, cruddy template. I mean, there's good template designs, but they're still not as good as a custom design. And tons of stock photography. We use stock photography because sometimes we have no choice. But a average unique photograph is far better than a super professional stock photograph. Because that super professional stock photograph has showed up in about 1,000 websites already, and so it's meaningless.
Now, given who you talk to on any given day, one HVAC professional might say, oh, web design is easy. All I have to do is go to so-and-so.com, make a template, boom, Bob's your uncle. On the other end of the spectrum, you might have somebody who says, oh, there's no way that I could handle web design, and I need to have a super expensive professional do it for me. In your experience, what's the, like, is web design easy? That's the question, really, what we're looking for.
No. Anybody can put up a website. There are a ton of tools out there to help you throw a website together, sure. But good, effective web design is not so easy. I've been doing it for over 20 years, I like to say, and I when I started working here at the Webmasters, I said to John, the guy interviewing me, that I've been doing web design as long as it's been a job, because I started in 1997. Were you born in 1997?
I was 6 years old.
See?
Rockin' pre-K.
So, yeah, it's hard. There's so many movies. It's not just about you look at the website and it looks nice. Famous saying, design is not just how it looks, it's how it works. And how it works is the important part, and it's the hard part. Anybody can put up a nice picture and use some decent colors and pick a font from the list on the GoDaddy website builder, which has been preset to be pleasing fonts so that you don't screw it up too badly. But what goes on the back end and what goes on in content and what the website is supposed to accomplish, that's a completely different story, and that's where it gets complicated.
Mm-hmm. I know as a writer / analyst, I can think of the number of times that I've gone to Richard, one of our experienced designers here at the Webmasters, and tried to communicate a concept for a website. I'm like, can I have this square over here? And just trying to communicate what I want out of a particular design, it definitely quickly shows you how much skill and how much talent actually the designers have.
That's top quality groveling.
I'm a writer. I grovel. That's what I do. Now, okay.
But he's right. And by the way, don't feel bad that you've had difficulty communicating that, because I mean I've had to build sites that people were paying really good money for with almost no instructions.
They wrote it on a napkin.
Yeah, the famous, it needs to pop, which makes my head pop.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on.
Okay. So, there are clearly some great examples out there in the HVAC industry. You can look up, like, let's say a technician wants to look up who's successful in their area. They can clearly see, oh, okay, well, they're being successful. Why don't I just do what they're doing? Now, can you do that? Can you just copy website design and be successful?
That's a complicated question.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean to copy a design?
Well, let's just say from a pure design standpoint, not like text and whatnot and the actual like keywords and whatnot. Can you just like, oh, okay, well, this looks good. Let's follow that, as closely as possible and do what they did.
If what they did, I mean, obviously, if you go look at 20 websites in any given industry,
mm-hmm.
if you can kind of break them down into their component parts, what you realize is that they all look similar in a lot of ways, and that's because of the fact that the format has become somewhat standardized,
mm-hmm.
and so they tend to have a lot of similar elements. But yeah, you can go in and make a website that looks almost the same as another one, but did you understand the intent in how it was made?
Mm-hmm.
What does the back end look like? Are you copying that too? If you copy the content, you're hosed, because
mm-hmm.
Google says, oh, that content's copied, and this other one had it first, so this one I'm going to ignore.
So you're talking like schema coding and whatnot?
Yeah, well, I'm also talking about content. I'm talking about schema code is copyable because it's a totally different thing. Schema code has a standard format. You say this schema code goes around this data and says this data means this. So the schema code for any given piece of data is always the same, mm-hmm. Within certain parameters. So yeah, you could do that. But here's the thing about just doing what your competitor does. If your competitor's been in business for 5 years and you just do what his does and you're brand new, you will never outrank him. You have to do better than what he did.
Going above and beyond.
You have to go above and beyond, because if you do exactly what he did, Google's going to look at it and they're going to say, yep, that one's really good. It's been around for 5 years and he's doing everything right. Hey, look, this one's doing everything right new also, but he's brand new. So what's my reason for showing this one instead of this one? Now, they might put you number 2, which is not bad, but of course you want number 1. But you're never going to get number 1 if you don't surpass that competitor. You can't just do what they're doing. You have to do everything they're doing better, or do everything they're doing plus more.
It reminds me of something you and Berlin were talking about the other day. It's not enough to get found by them. You actually have to have a reason for them to choose you over competitors.
Right.
Now, nowadays, there are so many different tools and so many different platforms for web design. There's even tools out there that will basically generate a website for you.
Mm-hmm.
Google has, Google Sites will basically do that for you, and there's other tools that will do that. I'd say it's still a ways off from being like good enough to really pass for a successful website. But we're kind of getting there to the
Yeah.
point where it's getting better.
Again, this is another case where, depending on what your competitor does.
Mm-hmm.
If your competitor has if all of your competitors in a given market have a garbage website, you can put up a template and just be a little better and outrank them. But if one of them then calls the webmasters and gets a much better website, all of a sudden they're going to jump up. It's an arms race.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, back to you.
And I think you're already answering my next question, which is web design dead? I mean, from a professional
podcast over. No,
from a
we
professional
planned that joke.
standpoint.
It sometimes it seems like it, but it's not dead. It's mature. I was sort of made this point earlier when I was talking about web design tending to be similar. It's similar because we've got essentially 3 formats for looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
Big screen, medium screen, small screen. And we know what works to convey a given type of information on each one of those, and that's what we use. But again, it's not just what it looks like, it's how it works. And so the intent behind it and what it's supposed to accomplish, that's part of design. And that's not going to go away, because every business is different, every market's different, every situation is different. Mm-hmm. So design will still have that element, even if visually they look really alike.
Mm-hmm. And an interesting thought is, even though web design itself, we know what works and the concepts behind that may be maturing in the industry, yet so many HVAC professionals still don't do it right.
Correct.
And there's there's handfuls of ones that are doing it well here and there, hopefully, with us because of you're doing well. And yet there's still hundreds more that are, like I said, on the back end of Google who aren't really nailing it down.
And
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead. Ask your question.
I was actually going to move along, but let's hear what you
I was just going to say that's because they don't. The HVAC business owner, he's an HVAC guy. I don't expect that guy to know web design and SEO and everything else, just like I don't know how to fix my air conditioner. The air conditioner is an arcane, magical box that makes my house livable, and I have no idea how it works.
I'm the same way with computers. I'm like, how do computers work? It's magic.
Nobody actually knows. And so they don't know, and unfortunately, it's really easy to contact a unscrupulous marketer who either doesn't know what they're doing or knows how to do it right but is too lazy, or has just decided it's easier to do something where they just take money and do very little work or whatever. It runs the gamut there. And so they don't know what they need to do because it's complex. It's highly complex, all the moving parts that go into a proper web marketing effort. And it's not surprising that a lot of people aren't doing it right, because it's hard to find the right partner to do it with. Mm-hmm. And that's why you call the webmaster. You've got to get that plug in there.
Yes. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about just the current industry standing, especially with HVAC, but other industries are the same. But let's talk a little bit about the concepts behind graphic design and other bits of web design. Now, there are so many different elements that go into creating a given website. But as far as web design goes, if you could break those into a handful of elements, how would you describe it? Yeah, of core elements. How would you describe it to an HVAC professional?
Oh, that's a tough question.
Yeah.
I'm not actually sure what you're asking for.
So, there's navigation, how you actually construct the site. There's visual elements that go into it. There's even just the way that you format pictures and layout. I'm answering the question now.
I'm just going to leave. No, there's. I would break it down a slightly different way, actually, because it's all about how information is conveyed. Mm-hmm. And the core elements of web design are the display of the information and the access of the information. And I mean, 2. That's it.
Okay.
And you can literally get everything from that, because the navigation is how you get to it, and everything else is how it's displayed. And the information, when you break it down, when you reduce it to that, the information can come in the form of pictures and text, infographics, video, whatever it is. And how that's displayed is dependent on the device it's being viewed on.
Right.
And what it is. You don't put video in the same box you put text in, or a picture, or anything else. So depending on what the information you're trying to convey, you have multiple different ways you can break down and choose to show that. Once upon a time, there was an ethic in web design that you should attempt to not have scrolling. Now, you guys probably can't imagine that.
So have it all on one page?
One screen and clicking to get everything.
Okay.
And then people started, and then the iPhone happened, and all of a sudden people have this screen that's only this big, and they can just do that. And now you can scroll for freaking ever, and it's effortless. And so now we have big long pages that scroll, and it completely changed the way we do everything. That's the web design radically changes every 2 or 3 years, if you're being honest about it. And I've seen it go through a lot of those. And so, yeah, the core element is access the information and how it's displayed. Okay. That's probably more of a reduction than you were looking for, but that's the right answer.
Well, I see I have to change up my questions a little bit then. Okay, so if you were, you threw me off. Yes. So, let's say you're talking to a prospective HVAC client, somebody who really needs insight into the design of a website. You're about to make it for them, and you need to communicate which elements are going to be most important so that they actually show up on search. What do you think are the most important elements from an SEO perspective?
All of them? No, that's a cop-out, but it's the traditional SEO answer. It depends. And it does, but who they are, how to speak to them, what they do.
Okay.
And that's marketing 101, but it's still true.
So services, keywords, communicating that effectively.
Correct. And a lot of people get bogged down in code and headers and images and title tags and alt tags and stuff like that. But all of those things are just things that help us do those first 3 things I said. It's telling Google and that's the thing. When you put a website up, you're doing it for 2 different audiences. You're doing it for Google, and you're doing it for your prospective customer. Now, Google is trying to make it so that the algorithm behaves more like your prospective customer, so that someday we may only have to do it for one audience. But right now, we structure it for both. We're trying to capture Google's eye so that they show it to your customer and then capture their eye. But yeah, I mean, that's it. We make sure that it's discernible very quickly who you are, what you do, and how to call or email or however you prefer. I mean, mostly it's calling, but however you prefer your clients reach out to you, and you make those things easy. Yeah. And if whatever information they're looking for isn't immediately available, you have to have a way for them to get to it. So that's navigation and usability as a broad concept are highly important.
That's a good point. I think so many contractors, they look at what's being successful, and in their mind, they might just see, oh, it looks pretty.
Yeah.
Oh, it has this fancy scrolling feature that pops up these new windows whenever I scroll down. That's cool. And I think so many people don't realize that the same elements that make it easier, like you say, to find that information quickly, the contact information, is what makes SEO more successful as well.
Right. Yeah.
If people can find it easily, then Google has an easier time of finding it as well.
And part of the success of SEO is not simply placement on Google, but it's click-through rate, CTR, and conversion.
Sales.
Getting a click to your website that ends there and never reaches you is worthless. Now, obviously, not every click on the website results in a phone call. But if you don't have at least a certain percentage, it's not a successful effort.
The design is failing.
Yeah. So you have all of this effort that goes into making sure Google's happy, but then when you get to the site, you have to make sure, again, that the prospective customer is happy and feels comfortable, and that touches back on what I said before, and that they feel some kind of connection and want to call you. Now, I mean, there's other factors that play into this. If someone's got a plumbing emergency and they're standing knee deep in sewage leaking out of their pipes,
They're going to call
they
the first
don't
person.
sit there and scroll and read through the nuances. They call the guy on the top of the search. So.
Which is why people pay so much for water restoration keywords.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, all emergency service. Same thing. If since we're talking about HVAC, if it's 104 degrees, I mean, we're in Texas here, and it's 104 degrees, it's August, and your AC goes out, you're not shopping. You're just getting your AC fixed as quickly as possible.
Or like it is, like this morning, down in the 20s, and your furnace hasn't been used in years.
We don't have furnaces in Texas. We have heaters.
That's right. So let's talk about this from a site visitor perspective, but let's flip it around a little bit.
Okay.
What sort of web design snafus will drive away a visitor? Let's say they've actually clicked on your link in the search results, and they land on your site, and they see something, they're like, oh my gosh, and then click away. What do you think are those things that HVAC professionals need to stay away from?
Slow loading. If it's slow loading, they may never let it load all the way. Auto playing videos in your header. If they're looking something up and they happen to be at their office, or they happen to be in a quiet room, like if they're in a waiting room and they're looking something up and all of a sudden it's playing. We had a client once that their site, the header of the site had a video playing with some AC/DC as the soundtrack, and they insisted that it auto play. And somebody, at some point, someone went to that site, and they were somewhere they were trying to be quiet, and Back in Black starts up, and they clicked off that site immediately. So don't do that.
That actually happened.
No. Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I am not. This is not a theoretical or a hypothetical. It happened.
Man.
And it was a nice video. It was a drone shot going over, showing some work they'd done. It was cool and all that, but mute the sound. Anything that confuses your prospective customer. If the site is laid out in such a way, that's one of the reasons web design has become so standardized. People, it sort of moved in that direction, and people got used to the menu's going to be here, this is going to be here. If you diverge from that too much and they're confused, they're going to go,
where is it?
Button.
Yeah.
And they're not going to spend a lot of they are not going to waste any of their time trying to figure out how your site works, because there's a guy directly under you in the search results, and his site doesn't do that. Or maybe it's two down, but it doesn't matter. Point is, they're not going to do that. So don't go too far afield of standard web design. Don't get cute. We had a client recently. It was a really cool looking site. It had this kind of weird 50s advertising style vibe. They had done a custom photo shoot with black and white photos. It was an expensive website. But They'd had it 2 years, and they said ditch this whole idea because they had clients complain about it constantly because it was distracting from getting to the information. Good web design should be transparent. It should fade into the background. It should highlight things that are important, help you get from point A to point B, and that's all it should do. It is not an old style movie poster. That's not its purpose. And that kind of thing. I mean, and this, as a designer, it kills me to say it because I like doing that stuff. I like making those things. When we started doing web design, when I started doing web design, you did some crazy crap that just made no sense. And we did those intro pages that had 30-second animations in which nothing was accomplished. You know, for no reason other than we could, and you can't do stuff like that anymore.
I can't even think of the last time something like that.
I remember there was we used to do those, and then everybody started putting the skip intro button because nobody wanted to wait through that stuff. And then there was a guy who created a Flash animation and put it up at the website skipintro.com. And it was this looping animation that never ended, and if you skipped intro, it didn't actually skip if you hit that button. And it had all these words flying across like totally useless, utterly pointless. And that's what it was. And so I get that you want to kind of stand out and stuff like that. Do it a different way.
It sounds very similar to how we're told to, write stuff. I mean, we can be like all flowery, we can do an elaborate story about stuff, but at the end of the day, people are just looking to find the service that they need. And if you can spell it out in an easy to digest way, you're going to win over trying to get cute with it, like you said.
I probably, when I interviewed you and hired you, and when I interviewed you, I bet I said, if you want to be the next Ernest Hemingway, that's great. Don't do it while you're on the clock.
That sounds familiar.
Because I say that to all the writers. Because that's not what we're doing. No, we actually had a writer in here once that he came to me and he said, I don't think this is going to work for me. I applaud him for his integrity. And we parted ways because it was like no metaphors, no flowery speech, straightforward. He was like, I can't do it. It's killing me. I was like, sorry, dude. That's how it is. But the same thing goes for design. It doesn't have to be flashy. Doesn't have to be elaborate. It has to convey information.
So let's skip ahead here.
Did I completely wipe out half your questions?
You've obliterated a couple of them.
And this is why I didn't read the questions beforehand.
You can tell there was no preparation here. Now, okay. Let's talk about sales for a second here. We've mentioned it earlier, and as you said, if a site doesn't actually create calls, then it's not being successful.
Correct.
From a web design perspective, what can you do? What elements can you take charge of to maximize that conversion potential?
First and foremost is make it very apparent and very easy for the potential customer to contact the service provider. However that contact is accomplished, usually a phone call, make it obvious and easy. There should not be any roadblocks to content. No, what we like to call friction in design is what slows people down and prevents them from, going through the page too fast or whatever. The contact to the service provider should be utterly frictionless. The other one is, the biggest one is, I mentioned it earlier, is that personal touch, that virtual personal connection, the pictures of the business owner, maybe with his wife and kid, or maybe with his crew all smiling, wearing their nice pressed 3 buttons with the company logo right here in front of their wrapped trucks or whatever they've got.
And just an aside, that is surprisingly more rare than you think it would be.
Oh yeah. Crazy rare. I mean, we so often we talk to clients and we say, hey, what, you got any pictures? No. It's like, you got a smartphone, you could take some. Because it doesn't have to be a professional photo shoot. I also made this point earlier that a unique photo that's yours, that's you, that's your trucks, that's your facility, whatever, your guys at work, is far more effective in terms of SEO than the most expensive stock photo you will ever buy.
Because Google knows it's an original.
Yeah. And it's more relevant. They pay more attention to it. Oh, that's not the same photo, and that's these guys, and that's people, and it's a unique photo, so it must actually be them. So they really are doing this thing. And I mean, you can if you don't have any, you can everybody's got a smartphone, everybody's got a camera at all times. Take some pictures with your smartphone and send them to us. Please turn it this way, this way.
Landscape, please. Yeah.
Take some videos. Also, turn it this way. Videos would be great. Videos are awesome. If you've got the money and you want to do it, get the best of both worlds and get your photographs, but have them professionally taken. That's great. That's extremely rare for us, but every once in a while we get it, and we always see the difference in personal photographs over stock. It can't even be stated how much of a difference it can make. Because people see that, they get that, and not just it does better for SEO, but then your potential customer looks at it, they get that virtual, tenuous personal connection, and they feel like you're a real person, and they're more likely to call you.
And the effect it has once that person actually shows up at your doorstep, just being put at ease. Oh yeah, I've seen them on the website.
Yeah, whether you are the one that comes to their house or whatever, but if you've got a picture of your crew and they recognize that guy, it's that's customer for life if you do a good job, which I'm sure you will do.
More 5-star reviews. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Now
that's a whole different podcast.
Now, one of the earlier things you mentioned is that simply just making it easy for somebody to contact you is so important. Nowadays, there's a dozen ways to get somebody to allow people to contact your HVAC business. It could be a form, it could be just copy and pasting your number all over the place, and there's even like chat bots and whatnot out there that let you contacts into direct message and whatnot. In your opinion, there's so many different ways to contact people. What is the best, if you had to pick 3, what are the best ways or tools to put on a website so that people can contact you easily?
Highest conversion, and it's not even close, is still a phone call. And that means having your phone number or a call now button that they touch it, and it switches their, provided they're on their phone, and mostly, at least half the time these days they are. They click that, and it switches to their phone call app and calls you with little to no interruption. Most mobile browsers pop up a window that says, "Do you want to call this number?" Which I find highly irritating. Because I would prefer,
I clicked on it.
Yeah, but I find it irritating as a user and a designer, because I would prefer to remove that friction, like I said, and just let call, nothing in between. But we don't control the browsers, and they're we can't script it in any way to remove that.
We're not Apple, sorry.
Yeah, it's built into the. Well, it's Android does it too.
Okay.
It's built into the system, and we can't circumvent that. But that is by far your best overall conversion rate, is that phone call. Mostly because people don't like to talk on the phone anymore, and if they're willing to talk to you on the phone, that means they're serious. So if you get a phone call, it's far more, it means a lot more than if you just got a text. Now, that being said, text is the next best one. We have on our HVAC Webmasters site, there's a little box you can click, and you can text a request to call back or request to a message. Yeah. And that works for people who dislike calling a lot. But that is, without doubt, our second most common thing. It's not nearly as high up the list as calls, but it's the second best. Email would be third. It's a distant third. And there's not really anything after that.
Now, when you say text, do you lump in Facebook Messenger, direct messaging sort of stuff?
I mostly mean SMS messaging.
Okay.
Facebook Messenger, we take that. We have a Facebook page. I'm being told by my director to move over. I'm sure he's frustrated with me. And we do get messages there, but they're rare.
Mm-hmm.
And they tend to be less serious. There are people saying, hey, what are your rates? Not, I have this problem, I want you to solve it, which is what you get when you get the phone call. But it's, what are your rates? Which is someone who is not in an emergency situation or does not have a great level of need right now and is shopping,
mm-hmm.
which every provider out there knows is you want that lead too. You want all the leads you can get, but that's probably your least, the least of all the leads you want.
Right, right. Because it's less likely to actually turn into a call. Or,
right.
Yeah.
If you're talking, when you said DMs, I assume you meant like Twitter DMs?
Yeah, that would work as well. Basically anything that it's like a quasi SMS, like Facebook Messenger, it's more like you're receiving a text.
Yeah.
Because it goes directly to an account or even, some people's phones.
Yeah.
And for somebody out on a job, that might actually be useful.
We don't see a lot of evidence that services like HVAC gets a lot of traction from Facebook and Twitter.
Mm.
They just don't get that. We don't see people, the end customer, going to Facebook and Twitter to find a service provider for that.
Mm.
It's just the nature of those, the nature of the beast there. People lump social media into if they're looking for different kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
So now, a Facebook advertising can be effective for some. I read a great story, saw a great interview actually, where a marketer was talking about a client that had been running ads at it was in a smaller town, they had one movie theater. And he put ads up for his services. He was one of those people that bought the ad that got played on the movie screen before the previews. Mm-hmm. And he saw conversion and saw his business bump every weekend off that ad, and it was great. And then it started to fall off. And he didn't know why, and he went to the theater and he realized everybody was looking at their phone. And so he took all the money he was spending on that movie screen ad, and he put it into a Facebook ad that was set to run in a small radius around that theater on Friday and Saturday between 6 and 9.
Which was dirt cheap, I bet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And, Facebook advertising is pretty cheap anyway, frankly. It's actually foolish not to get into it. Mm-hmm. And so all those people, they used to be looking up and seeing his ad there, and then they stopped looking up there, and then all of a sudden they're looking down and they're seeing it on their Facebook feed when they're looking at their phone. And he got immediate results from that. So Facebook advertising is, I like to say that Facebook advertising, is more like traditional advertising in that it tries to put stuff in front of people's eyes in their day-to-day lives wherever they happen to be. Mm-hmm. And the average Facebook user checks Facebook 14 times a day. So the eyeballs are on Facebook a lot. So you may not get a lot of DMs and search on Facebook, but you can get a lot of awareness on Facebook.
Good branding opportunities.
Yeah, awareness and branding opportunities. Exactly.
Cool. Well, I think we got time for a couple more questions here.
Okay.
So we've talked a lot about what is current trends that haven't really changed very much over the last few years. Have you seen any particular design trends, up and coming stuff, that are a big enough change but important enough that HVAC professionals should be watching out for them?
The biggest upset in design in recent years, but it's technically about 2 years old, was the rise of these mobile and the fact that Google did just announce, this is actually important, they announced recently that responsive design, in which you have the same site that rearranges itself for the screen.
Whatever device you're on.
Whatever device you're on, they will favor that. That's a direct ranking factor over a separate mobile site. We used to have, you had the desktop site and then you had the m.mobile site. It maybe had the same information, but it was a different site. It was separate. and they don't. They actually came out just about a month ago, actually, and said that it's. They always said they preferred responsive. They'll say, we would really like you to do this.
Yeah, that's been for years. Yeah.
But it takes a while for them to make it a rule. And they made it a rule. They said it's a direct ranking factor now. If you're talking about pure design, I think it's just the fact that web design is mature and that you shouldn't be thinking in terms of you shouldn't be thinking in terms of visual uniqueness. Because if you look at 20 websites, you're going to see a navigation bar at the top, maybe on the top right, maybe all the way across the top. You're going to see a big picture. You're going to see a logo. You're often going to see a contact form in the above the fold,
and a big old number.
And a big old number.
Yeah.
And then you're going to see some content, and then you're going to see a conversion area where or a call to action area, and so forth and so on, and it goes down. And then down in the footer, you're going to see an address and a map and some supplementary links and a privacy policy. And that's okay, because most of the magic is happening on the back end. Now, there's things we do on the front end to make them look nice. But don't look at a site and say, well, that looks like everybody else's, or that looks too much like my old one, or that looks like this one I saw over here, or whatever. Don't strive to be super unique just from a visual perspective for its own sake, because it really has matured. And the other thing that the rise of the smartphone did is the concept of mobile first design, where you're thinking about the small screen first, means that when you blow it up to the big screen, we're not adding a lot of fluff anymore.
Not trying to cram a lot of space.
Yeah, because, and we're also not adding just crazy visual elements like we used to do. And I mean, wow, did we used to. I one time, early on in my career, I did some freelance work for a major agency in Dallas. And they had gotten Atmos Energy as a client. And they had this bizarre idea where they had a geodesic sphere floating on a sky background. And as you rolled over it, the triangles that made up the sphere would light up, and then the label would show up. So it had to be this discovery thing. Yeah, absolute horse crap.
That's
it was
horrifying.
A nightmare. But it was fun to build. I enjoyed it immensely. I got paid well. So, But yeah, don't seek conceptual brilliance in your website. Your website has a purpose, and the purpose defines the design.
That's actually a really good place to end on. Yeah, I was going to say, what's your good takeaway? But yeah, just don't try to be extra unique. That's not the automatic win.
Right.
The win is
uniqueness comes
content.
in your service to your client. Your website just needs to convey information in an effective way and allow communication.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you, Jason, very much for giving us your time, and thank you very much, HVAC professionals, for listening in. We'll see you next time. Until then, see you later.
Take it easy.